There's something about quiet, isolated places at night that feels safe, almost too safe. I never expected to face fear standing alone in an old air traffic control tower, miles from the nearest town. But one night at Millfield Regional Airport changed everything I thought I knew about loneliness and terror. If you've ever worked alone in the dark, you'll understand how thin the line between calm and panic can get, and how fast it can snap. My name is James. I'm 24 years old, and I was fresh out of training as an air traffic controller when I got my first solo night shift at Millfield Regional Airport. Millfield is one of those tiny airports tucked away in the middle of endless farmland, the kind of place where you don't expect much to happen, except maybe a stray deer crossing the runway. The tower itself was a small brick building, with giant glass windows all around the control room, sitting just above the runway and taxiways. The airport mainly handled small private planes and emergency medical flights. Night shifts were usually quiet, giving controllers like me time to learn and get comfortable. I was excited, but also nervous. Being alone at night with only the hum of radios and the glow of radar screens felt like stepping into a new world. The night started slow. The room smelled faintly of old coffee and electronics. The lights buzzed faintly above as I flipped switches and adjusted dials. The radio crackled occasionally, mostly silence. I sipped cold coffee from a thermos and ran through my pre-shift checklist. The temperature dropped rapidly outside, the early March chill pressing against the windows. Around midnight, the only sound was the steady ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of a generator powering the runway lights. I tried to focus on my instruments, but the quiet was heavy, almost suffocating. At about 1:45 a.m., I heard faint tapping on the metal ladder that ran up the side of the tower. I turned sharply, shining my flashlight out the window, but saw nothing. Just the dark, wet tarmac stretching into the black fields beyond. Thinking it was just the wind or an animal, I ignored it. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. A private pilot was calling an emergency. His plane had lost instruments in a severe storm and needed immediate clearance to land. My heart rate jumped. The storm outside raged hard, rain pelting the glass, winds bending the weather vane on the roof. I took a deep breath and guided the pilot through the approach, giving every instruction carefully. His voice was tense but professional. As the plane descended, I caught a glimpse of something on the runway. A figure, standing still, barely visible through the rain and darkness. A woman, barefoot, wearing a long, soaked white dress, hair plastered to her face. Her eyes were wide and fixed, unblinking, staring directly toward the tower. I told the pilot to hold position, but he responded urgently. He couldn't hold in such turbulent air. The storm made visibility nearly impossible, and I felt a sinking dread that grew heavier as the woman remained motionless. Then the footsteps started. Heavy, slow, deliberate. They climbed the metal stairwell outside the tower, echoing against the steel. The door rattled violently, someone trying to get in. I locked it immediately, my breath catching in my throat. I radioed for ground crew backup, but no answer. The footsteps grew louder, closer. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The whisper came next, so faint I almost missed it. But I felt the cold breath on my neck as the voice hissed, "Come outside." I turned, but saw only empty air. The plane finally touched down, its wheels splashing through puddles. I grabbed my flashlight and ran outside, searching for any sign of the woman. but all I found were wet footprints leading from the runway to the base of the tower. And then, nothing. No sign of the woman anywhere. I reported everything to my supervisor, but with no evidence, the story was dismissed as stress or weather playing tricks. Still, I couldn't forget the cold breath, the whispered words, or the feeling that I was being watched. I transferred out of Millfield shortly after. Sometimes at night, I hear footsteps behind me or feel a chill on my skin. Reminders that some places hold shadows that never leave. Most people fear turbulence, engine failure, or unruly passengers. But on one red-eye flight, I encountered something no safety manual could prepare me for, a presence in an empty seat that should have stayed empty. I became a flight attendant in 2019. I was 26, fresh out of training, and more excited than scared. I had always loved airports, the energy, the movement, the constant feeling that something was about to happen. The job was demanding, but I liked it. I liked people. I liked the order of things, and I liked the strange bond flight crews shared, like we were part of some moving little world that lived 35,000 feet in the sky. But there's one night I'll never forget. A red-eye from Chicago to New York. A routine shift. Nothing unusual, until everything was. It was late October. The flight departed at 11:40 p.m., nearly full. I was assigned to rows 10 through 21, standard coach section. My co-worker, Melissa, had the back galley, and Jason worked the front. Everything was fine during boarding. Families, business travelers, college kids, and one man who stood out for being completely unremarkable, a passenger assigned to seat 18B. Only, according to the manifest, 18B was supposed to be empty. I didn't notice it right away. The cabin lights were dimmed for takeoff, and I was busy securing overhead bins and double-checking seat belts. I remember seeing a coat on that seat during boarding, dark gray, wool, a bit worn. I assumed someone had taken the wrong seat. Happens all the time. But about 40 minutes into the flight, as I rolled the beverage cart down the aisle, I noticed something strange. The coat was there, but I never saw anyone wear it. No movement, no tray down. No light on. Nothing. I asked the woman in 18A, the window seat, if her seatmate wanted anything. She looked confused. She glanced at the middle seat, and then at me. "He didn't say a word," she whispered. "I thought he was asleep, but I don't know. He's kind of freaking me out." I leaned forward to speak, but the seat was empty. No one was there. Just the coat, folded oddly, like someone had been sitting there for hours and had vanished between blinks. When I checked the manifest again at the front, it confirmed what I feared. Seat 18B was unassigned. No ticket, no standby. No one should have been there. Jason shrugged it off. Probably a mix-up. Maybe someone left it behind from the earlier leg. But that made no sense. The cabin had been fully cleaned before our boarding. Still, I tried to forget it. I went back to work. The rest of the service went by normally. Or at least, I tried to act like it did. But just before I reached the back galley, Melissa caught my arm. "Did you see the guy near 18B?" she asked, voice low. "The one wearing gloves?" My stomach turned. "I thought that seat was empty," I replied. Melissa looked pale. "It is now, But a few minutes ago, I swear I saw someone sitting there, just watching you, watching us. He didn't move, didn't blink. We walked back together and looked. The seat was still empty, but the coat had shifted. It was now lying across both 18A and 18B, as if someone had reclined and sprawled across them. I asked the woman in 18A again if everything was okay. She just shook her head. "I think he whispered something to me," she said, "but I couldn't understand it. It was like static or wind." I went to report the issue to the captain. He assured me it was probably just a misunderstanding, maybe a nervous flyer who moved around. But after we landed in New York, something even stranger happened. The coat was gone, vanished. No one claimed it. It wasn't in Lost and Found. It simply disappeared. I didn't say anything else that day. I just went home and tried to sleep. 1 week later, I was assigned to another red eye, this time from San Diego to Denver. A completely different route. New crew. New manifest. Halfway through the flight, I walked down the aisle and stopped cold. Row 18B, a coat, gray wool, folded exactly the same way. I pulled out the manifest. Empty. Seat 18B was not assigned to any passenger. I stared for a long time before continuing. I didn't say a word, but the longer I was on that plane, the colder the air around me felt. I actually started to shiver. My hands were trembling by the time we landed. When we deplaned, I watched carefully. Every passenger. No one had carried a coat like that off the aircraft. Again, it was gone. I started documenting everything. Flights, seat numbers, dates, times, weather. Every time I flew a red-eye in a half-full cabin, seat 18B would be empty on paper. But someone or something would leave behind that same coat. Sometimes, passengers nearby would complain of feeling watched. One woman said she woke up to someone whispering in her ear, but the seat beside her was empty. A man in 19C once rang the call button, sweating. Did someone just lean over me?" he asked. I felt something, like someone just stood up beside me, but nothing's there. Then it got worse. One night, I had a layover in Denver. I was in my hotel room, reviewing the next day's manifest. And there it was again. Flight 882, row 18B, unassigned. I dropped the printout, tried to sleep. At 3:17 a.m., the TV in my hotel room turned on by itself. Volume low. A flickering black and white screen. No image, just static. The room was freezing. I checked the thermostat. It read 68 degrees, but I could see my breath. I turned off the TV and crawled back under the covers. Before I closed my eyes, I swore I heard footsteps, soft and dragging, just outside my room. The last time it happened, I was flying from Boston to Dallas. I made it a point to avoid even looking at row 18, until a passenger asked for help. "Someone left their coat on my seat," he said. 18B. "It smells wet." I walked over slowly. Same coat. I reached out to grab it. The fabric was soaked. It dripped onto the floor. Not water, something darker, thicker, like it had been submerged in ice. The second I touched it, I heard something, a whisper, almost like a memory, a voice far too close to my ear. "You've seen me." I dropped the coat and stumbled back. But when I turned around, the seat was empty again, dry, as if nothing had ever been there. I asked the cleaning crew after landing. They found nothing. I requested to be taken off red-eyes permanently, and I left the airline 3 months later. Even now, years later, I still avoid the middle seat when I fly, especially row 18, especially on red-eye flights. And sometimes, when I'm walking down a quiet plane aisle, I feel a breeze that shouldn't be there, a cold draft across my arms, like something just moved past me, unseen, but never absent. Some passengers don't fly to get somewhere. Some just want to be noticed. I hadn't flown in years, but when my daughter asked me to visit her new home in Boston, I couldn't say no. I booked the cheapest red-eye flight I could find, United Flight 427, leaving Chicago at 11:30 p.m. At 62 years old, flying alone made me nervous, but the gate agent kindly let me pre-board. My seat was 16C, an aisle seat mid-cabin. The window seat, 16B, was marked vacant. An empty seat next to me felt like a small blessing. Little did I know, sometimes empty seats hide more than just space. The airport buzzed with late-night travelers, some rushing, others yawning, faces tired but expectant. I clutched my boarding pass tightly, trying to calm my nerves. The bright overhead lights in the terminal felt harsh, but I focused on the hum of announcements and rolling suitcases. When the gate agent called for pre-boarding, relief washed over me. No waiting in lines for me tonight. I made my way down the jet bridge and stepped onto the plane, into the dim cabin. Passengers were settling in. The quiet chatter of families, business travelers, and college students filled the air. I found my seat, nestled my carry-on overhead, and settled my jacket on my lap. The window seat beside me was empty, a rare luxury on such a full flight. Then I noticed him. A tall man in a long, dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat entered the row silently. He moved without hesitation, sliding into the window seat beside me, seat 16B. He didn't look up, didn't speak. His gloved hands folded calmly in his lap. His face remained hidden beneath the shadow of his hat. I tried to offer a polite smile, even whispered "long night ahead." No response. His silence was thick, heavier than the cabin air. As the plane rumbled down the runway and lifted into the night sky, the cabin lights dimmed. The drone of the engines and soft breathing filled the space. I felt the warmth of my jacket, but noticed his coat looked damp, like he had just stepped out in the rain. The strange thing was, the air inside was dry and warm. I tried to ignore it, but then I felt it, a faint pressure, as if his presence was leaning slightly toward me, though he didn't move. His arm rested on the armrest firmly, preventing me from moving mine comfortably. The hours dragged on. I tried to sleep, but the man's silent presence was a constant weight. Occasionally, I glanced sideways, hoping for a sign of life, a blink, a breath, a shift. Nothing. I asked the flight attendant if he wanted anything. She looked at him, shrugged, and placed a small bottle of water on his tray table. The water remained untouched. After what felt like an eternity, I excused myself to visit the restroom. I shuffled down the aisle, trying to keep calm. From the side, seat 16B looked empty. I blinked, looked again. Still empty. No footsteps followed me. Was he gone? When I returned, the man was back in his seat, silent and still. Sleep was impossible now. The man's stillness felt unnatural. His coat looked heavier, his gloves darker. Every time I looked away, I imagined him leaning closer. I felt cold, though the cabin was warm. Suddenly, the plane hit turbulence, shaking and rattling. I gripped the armrest tightly. A flicker of the overhead reading light caught his hand. It was pale, almost translucent. I blinked hard, and when I looked again, the seat was empty. My heart raced. Where had he gone? I scanned the aisle desperately. Passengers avoided my eyes. Flight attendants gave worried looks, but no answers. No one else had seen him. After landing at 6:15 a.m., I was approached by a young attendant. "Ma'am, you sat alone in that row. Seat 16B was empty the entire flight, according to our records." My breath caught. I still don't know who he was. Somewhere between reality and something else, some passengers ride in silence. Unseen, unheard. Maybe some flights carry more than just the living. Maybe some empty seats aren't empty at all.